Hello, everybody. This is your favorite Bronze Age Spider-Man podcast. Here comes the Spider-Cast. This is your co-host, Mike L. And as always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell. And today we're going to be taking a look at Spider-Man comics from April of 1983.
That's right. And we have another special guest joining us this week. He's the host of the Windsor Public Library Graphic Novel Club. Why don't you tell us who you are, special guest?
Hello, my name's Adam Peltier. As Mike explained, I am a librarian at Windsor Public Library. I host a graphic novel club and a film discussion club. The graphic novel club, we were on a bit of a hiatus, but we're coming back. We're doing an online version of it. So if you go to our Facebook page for the Windsor Public Library, you can look at it and you can join up.
Awesome.
All right. Yeah, for sure. And the first book is going to be, Kingdom Come by Mark Waid, right? And I don't know if this is gonna be posted before then, but we can still promote it maybe on our Twitter site or in Facebook and all that. But anyway.
Okay, cool. There'll be plenty of other sessions anyway.
That's right. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna start off this week with Amazing Spider-Man 239. Before we jump into it, Adam, I just want to know. I know that you're a fan of comic books, but are you a Spidey fan?
Spider-Man was my hero growing up.
Really?
Nice.
He was the hero that got me into comics. Unfortunately, it was right around the time of the Clone Saga, so it was a weird time.
Sure.
But he's always had a place in my heart as being one of my favorite superheroes, and Amazing has always been one of my favorite titles. And this is a great one to get into as well, because this is part of the very famous Hobgoblin storyline.
Yeah.
Yes. So it sounds like you're going to be more enthusiastic about these comics than Becca and Jolie were last week, because Becca talked about how sick she was of Peter Parker, and then when I asked her if she was a fan of Hobgoblin, she said, well, is anyone? But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But anyway, okay, so this is a great episode to have you in on then, Adam. Okay, so this is the second ever appearance of the Hobgoblin. For those that don't know, he's the successor of the Green Goblin. And at this point, his identity was a secret, which makes the Hobgoblin saga so cool, right? So Adam, have you read this issue before?
No, this was my first time.
Wow. Okay, cool. Well, I'll quickly summarize it, and then we'll jump into the review. So, when last issue ended, we basically were introduced to the Hobgoblin suiting up for the very first time, and he's discovered an old secret headquarters of the Green Goblin and stolen all of his his costume and his weapons, and he's redesigned everything to create this new character that he is, which is the Hobgoblin. And so at the beginning of this issue, we see Harry Osborn, who I think this is only the second time we've seen Harry in 3 years worth of Spider-Man comics, right, Josh?
Yeah, it's been some time. I think Peter went to go visit him once, but they were kind of estranged and not really talking to each other, so I don't think it really ended well, and then that was about it.
Right, so Harry Osborn's back here because Norman Osborn, his late father, his buildings have been being attacked and ransacked, and so the police are investigating. So he knows that something's going on, but he's not sure what yet. So then we cut over to this mysterious figure who is the Hobgoblin, but again, we don't know who he is because his face is constantly in shadow. So he goes back to his new Hobgoblin headquarters, and he's kind of like just explaining what's going on, and he's basically giving his plans to the reader and talking about what he's planning to do. We jump over to Spidey, who's in the hospital visiting the Black Cat, who's been injured over in an ongoing storyline in Spectacular Spider-Man, which we'll get to later this episode. And he kind of just gives you a quick fill-in on what's going on with her and Dr. Octopus. We catch a little bit of Jean DeWolf. Adam, are you familiar with Jean DeWolf?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so unfortunately, when I started reading Spider-Man, she was already deceased. So it's kind of cool to see her as like a regular recurring supporting character this time. So and then I love this too. Then we drop in again. This is something I don't know if Stan Lee invented this, but like just dropping in on in comic books, like just dropping in on Madam Web. We haven't seen her in a few issues, but she is in this hospital. So we touch base with her, even though she was created by the previous writer. Roger Stern still brings her back and kind of gets some more some more story ideas out of her. I'm sure she'll be back. We'll see. And then and then we cut over to some supporting cast with Lance Bannon doing a photo shoot with, who's this girl here? I don't remember who it was.
I can't remember her name.
Yeah, but it's kind of funny because she's clearly hitting on him, but he's too focused on work. So I gotta wonder if at this point maybe they're setting up, maybe Lance Bannon is the Hobgoblin, right? Because I think there was a lot of red herrings as we went through the mystery. So basically, Spidey, we get some classic Spidey. His costume smells because he's been in it too long, so he's got to take a shower. Then this is the same girl from earlier, right? So now she's calling, right? This is the same girl, right?
Yes.
So now she's asking Peter to meet her for dinner, but he slept through the day. So he's like, okay, no, that's it. I got to go investigate what's going on. So then he ends up swinging through the city and coming across this light that's on at one of Norman Osborn's old headquarters, and he breaks through, and of course he encounters the Hobgoblin. Now, what ends up happening is in my opinion, it's good and it's bad, because what ends up happening is Spider-Man fairly easily beats the Hobgoblin, but there are a few unexpected surprises, like Hobgoblin's bats, his little flying, floating bats that he throws at him, and like a few other things. But for the most part, the point of this is to show that Hobgoblin is overwhelmed by how powerful Spider-Man is. He wasn't ready for this, and what he says at the end of the story in his thoughts is that he didn't realize how strong Spider-Man was. So he assumes, well, Green Goblin must have had some other secret, so there must be more to this than I realized, so I've got to find out what his secret was. And again, it's been years since I've read this, so I don't remember if he does end up augmenting his strength. I guess we'll have to kind of wait and see. But, so yeah, again, I think it's a good story, but I would have liked, the classic way to do one of these stories, it was defined in the ancient story called Rocky III, where, first the guy loses, right? Then he comes back, he trains and he comes back and then he wins and he beats the bad guy, right? So I would have preferred that. But overall, I still thought it was another classic issue of Spider-Man. And because you're our guest this week, Adam, I'd like to have your thoughts first. What'd you think of this issue?
Overall, I thought it was pretty good. Now, I have to say, some of the artwork in here had great ideas, and some of the execution was fantastic. Even when you open it up, page 2 has that great layout of the Jersey Interstate over the panels. Just fantastic, very creative.
Yeah.
There are some times where I feel the artwork is a little bit disservicing to the characters, however. I'm thinking mainly where Peter is washing his outfit.
Okay.
There's a few goofy faces going on Peter there. I don't quite know what to make of those ones. And a lot of nudity. I was a little surprised about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, not full frontal, but yeah, I get your point, though. There's definitely sexual situations that you wouldn't really expect in a Spidey comic.
Yeah, especially in, there seemed to be a lot more in this one than normal.
Than usual, yeah. The other thing, too, I've always said about John Romita Jr. is that it's funny, considering his father's art is, in my opinion, some of the most beautiful superhero art I've ever seen, his son, John Romita Jr., does not care if his characters look ugly. That's the nicest way to say it. He just doesn't care, It's like, his art is, the anatomy's great, the design is great, the storytelling's flawless, but he doesn't care. It's like, sometimes he makes the muscles look ugly. Sometimes he makes the faces look ugly. Like this girl that Lance Bannon is taking photographs of on the bottom of digital page 9, original page 8. I mean, that's that classic John Romita Jr. kind of bony cheek face that he uses a lot. And it's just, I don't know, there's kind of just this rule, I guess, which Stan Lee and John Buscema, they kind of introduced in How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. They said that every line you add to a woman's face adds a year to her life or to her appearance. And so when you've got like 6 lines on her cheekbones, it kind of just makes her look a little bit too skull-like for me. But I don't know. Overall, I mean, I still like the art, but I can see where you're coming from, Adam. Like, what about the story? What do you think of the story?
The story itself, I thought, was really intriguing. I know what the outcome of the storyline was, but going back to this issue and actually thinking about what it would have been like reading this for the first time, like you said, Mike, there was a lot of red herrings presented for who the Hobgoblin actually could be, and I think Bannon is like a really great character to have in here as a foil for Peter Parker. In terms of the battle that he had with Hobgoblin, I actually really appreciated the fact that Hobgoblin just did not clear the deck with him. Because
Sure.
I've seen that happen so many times, just not in Spider-Man comics, but so many Marvel comics. Having a disadvantaged supervillain actually realize that he has to regroup, I think it's great because it does show Spider-Man is formidable. He isn't just being knocked down by every single new villain that crops up,
Right.
but at the same time, there's foreshadowing. There's something else that the Goblin must have had, and like you said, I'm not sure if he augments his strength with a Goblin formula or what happens. The exact details are a bit fuzzy for me, but it's good. It gives a lot of storytelling. It gives a lot of storytelling potential.
No,
Right.
I completely agree.
I agree.
And going off of what Mike was saying earlier with the Rocky analogy, I think that like at this point we kind of know everything about Peter Parker, and we know all of Spider-Man, and there's not a lot of like character development happening with him. So I'm more interested in seeing the character development for the supervillains, right? So I feel like the Hobgoblin is our Rocky in this instance, where he's the one that fails the first time, and we want to see him get stronger and come back and fight Spider-Man and have this even match. So having this story, like Hobgoblin does kind of get beaten real quick. I'm okay with that because we see him at the end kind of realize that he needs to do something else to kind of be on the same level as Spider-Man. So we're definitely eager to see what's going to happen next. So I think it was a really good setup for things to come.
Right. And I don't know, I guess, again, it's kind of hard for me to be objective, but I thought this was a really good issue. I mean, like Josh, do you think it stood out as a above average issue of Amazing?
I wouldn't say above average. I think it was pretty on par with what we've seen for Amazing so far. Again, I think with Amazing, they've really done well with giving us more intriguing supervillains and not just kind of like a dude that Spider-Man's gonna punch for 20 pages. So
right.
I think it's definitely above the regular issues of a lot of the comics we've been reading, but I don't think it's the best of Amazing we've seen so far.
I'll agree with that. Yeah. And I gotta say, compared to the other two Spider-Man comics this week, this shows how it should be done, I think.
For sure.
This is, in my opinion, a good issue. Adam, overall, what'd you think of this issue? You think it was better than you expected or worse, or...
No, it was pretty much what I was expecting. Like, from this era of Spider-Man comics, I've read some issues. I kind of knew what the tone was going into it. I thought it was serviceable. I thought it was even decent. I agree, though. I don't think it was exceptional. And I think even though the battle with Hobgoblin made this issue worth checking out, since this was his first conflict with the Hobgoblin, beyond that, in terms of the storytelling and the narrative, I just feel like there needed to be a little bit more.
Okay, good point. Fair point. Well, we'll have to... Hopefully we'll have you on again and we'll revisit another chapter in the Hobgoblin saga, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so now we are going to jump to Marvel Team Up. Josh, you can take it from here.
All right. This is my... Everybody knows this is my favorite part of the... the podcast where I get to talk about the Marvel Team Up story. So we start this issue with Peter Parker running into Steve Rogers at this fair, like this carnival that's happening, and then this villain known as the Vermin shows up, and he kind of has these giant rats, these rodents of unusual size, if you will, show up and start kind of wrecking havoc, and Spider-Man and Cap both don their costumes and start fighting him. And then we have these kind of weird subplots where both Steve Rogers and Peter Parker have their like relationships tested, and like they both have moments of weaknesses where they're about to cheat on their significant others, and then they both at the same time kind of realize that they can't do that, and then they join up again to fight the Vermin one last time and defeat him. And that's pretty much what happens in the issue. Yeah. It's very weird because Peter has this really weird moment with what's her name?
Maya?
Yeah, Maya or Mia. And it's really weird because the other two issues were dealing with Black Cat being in a coma.
Yeah.
And
right.
It's so weird. This must take place chronologically after the events of Spectacular, I would assume, because she's back in danger. Because in the last issue of Spectacular, I believe she wakes up from a coma and she's fine. But then, I mean, I guess spoilers for what we're going to be talking about next in Spectacular, but we see that she kind of slips back into it.
Yeah, I mean, she's still hospitalized, and no matter what, she, he says in one of the issues this month that he loves her, doesn't he? Black Cat, I think.
I think so. I mean, even in this one, he's talking about whoa, how, I can't do this. Black Cat's in intensive care. I can't be doing.
Right.
It's just, I don't know. It's weird. I feel like it comes out of nowhere, and there's no reason for either of them to show this moment of weakness, I guess.
Well, before we reveal our thoughts about the ongoing writing of J.M. DeMatteis, Adam, let's actually talk about the cover really quickly here. You'll notice this is I think this is our first photo cover, right?
I think so, yeah.
For Spider-Man, definitely. I personally do not like photo covers at all, personally. No. Adam, what do you think of this photo cover?
I thought it was the most god-awful thing I've ever seen.
Right. It just...
The Captain America mask is baggy. There's chin folds where it's supposed to be sticking to the neck. It's like someone threw a plastic bag over Steve Rogers' head. Spider-Man, I don't know what's with his costume. Maybe it's because of the scan, but his costume looks like it's glowing, and the webbing looks like it's inked on.
I was going to say, it looks like the inking is drawn on, the webbing is drawn on. Yeah.
It's just, no, it's horrible.
It is. And, at least if they would have maybe filmed it at night and did some cool mood lighting to kind of hide the fact that there's these cheap costumes, I don't know, maybe in 1983 this looked cool, but considering cosplayers look better than this now,
yeah,
it looks ridiculous, But, yeah, Josh and I have had a lot to say about the quality of Marvel Team Up. But Adam, I want to know your thoughts on this issue, especially compared to the Amazings that we just read.
I feel like there's a lot of animosity from you guys for this series. I don't know. I'm going to have to be a dissenter. I actually didn't mind it that much. The whole thing, I did agree. It seemed out of character for Peter Parker to have this sort of, how should I say this, conflict of interest. Is he going to be with Mia or not? But it was nice to actually see his kind of conflict paralleled with Steve Rogers. I actually thought that was an interesting choice for character development. Maybe it wasn't quite in line with their characters, but it was interesting. And this is a dark secret. I actually love Vermin. I think,
really?
I think Vermin's an underrated villain when he's used properly. The problem here, he was not used properly. He's more like a Captain America villain, or not a Captain America villain. He's more like a Captain Planet villain.
Okay.
All right.
He's busting into the fair. Look at my rats and my lions, I guess he has.
I'm not sure what they are.
Attack the fair because we want food. I don't know. When it comes to good depictions of this character, he's shown as having psychological damage. The reason he's Vermin is because he's been conditioned to believe he is scum, that he comes from a lower income household. And so it kind of is like a psychological manifestation. He becomes the thing he's told. There's substance to that.
Right.
Here, he's just he's a weird werewolf dude. There's not much to him in this.
Right. So
with that said, I always love seeing Vermin. Even when it's poorer, I love seeing the guy represented.
Now, where have you come across Vermin in other stories?
Probably you're going to see him in a lot of 90s material from Spider-Man. Around Maximum Carnage, you're going to see him around there a little bit. And a few storylines in the late 80s as well. Exact titles or storylines are escaping my mind, but they did some good stuff when his character reformed and became human again. And a lot of conflict he was having, struggling with that inner beast within. That stuff is good. Here, The thing that really gets me in the end, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, but at that ending where he's just looking up at Spider-Man and Captain America, he's saying, I'm going to eat you, I'm going to kill you. They just kind of look down and walk away. I don't know. They're just trusting this to the police. I mean, this is a guy with razor-sharp talons.
Yeah.
Here you go. Take him.
Well, I think the ironic thing is that I first came across Vermin in Kraven's Last Hunt. And then he also came back in a sort of sequel to Kraven's Last Hunt in Spectacular Spider-Man. But both of those were written by J.M. DeMatteis. In fact, I think he might have even created them in Captain America. So I don't know if he wrote the stories that you'd read before. But at this point, he certainly wasn't as good a writer as he was later. And Josh and I don't, as far as I know, we don't hate Marvel Team Up. It's just that the quality's very hit and miss, I think. Some issues are pretty good, and then some, I think at best for me, I like the vibe, I like the art, I like the levity and all that, but it just a lot of times feels like he's just throwing a lot of ideas together, or throwing ideas at a wall and seeing what sticks.
Right.
And yeah, and again, like with Amazing this week, we saw a plot that was very clearly laid out and was, it was really cool to follow. But this, again, with the parallels between Steve Rogers and Peter Parker, it might be cool, but in my opinion, it might be trying a little bit too hard to force kind of like a theme on this when it doesn't seem to fit either character. The idea that they would cheat on their girlfriends, Right.
I think that this was definitely an above average issue of Marvel Team Up, because for the most part, we kind of see Spider-Man just picked up and plopped into somebody else's story, and he doesn't belong. And I think that's where my problem is with Marvel Team Up a lot of the time is it just, Spider-Man doesn't belong in the story, and he's just there for everybody else to read the other person's story, which is fine, but there has to be some sort of reason he's there, right? Like, make him a part of the story if this is going to be a Marvel Team Up, not, Spider-Man just kind of there along for the ride. So I did at least like that there was kind of a reason for Spider-Man and Cap to team up in this one. We have Peter and Steve Rogers already having a pre-existing relationship, so when they get together, it makes sense that these two heroes are together because they have just happened to bump into each other, and their alter egos are familiar with each other. So then when they both sense danger, they change into their hero form and run out and have that team up. So that's fine. That's definitely better. It's definitely better. It's definitely more well done in this issue than
it's definitely
most.
More better. Yes.
Definitely more better. No, it's so I did enjoy that more than most of the other Marvel team ups we've read, but I think that the Vermin story, it felt weird. I think maybe with the subplot that they were trying to do with that kind of like cheating storyline. I don't know, what did you guys get? Like, why? Like, was there a reason maybe that there was like the cheating thing with Vermin? Like, maybe there was just something I wasn't picking up on, or
not that I saw.
No.
Adam, did you?
No, and I know where you're coming from. Sometimes you're going to have a villain that kind of parallels something the hero's going through. It accentuates some personal tension that the character is experiencing. Here, it seemed superfluous. It could have been any character, could have been any villain. It wouldn't have really mattered.
Okay.
Right. That's exactly, I think, the J.M. DeMatteis' biggest weakness at this point is he knows how to do the individual components of like writing a good story, but he doesn't know how to make it all work together, how to make it gel.
Yeah.
But I do have to point out a really good scene, my favorite scene in the book, and that's when they burst out of the bathroom stalls. And they're both
great.
in costume, and Captain America's like, I seem to be running into you in the strangest places lately. Rooftops, men's rooms. I'm like, what the? I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, that's great.
Anyway, one of those out of context things, if you don't know.
Right.
But anyway.
And that was a...
Well, also, the guy comes out of the stall and he says, only in New York.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And I think that was also probably a callback to the previous issue with the Marvel team up when Cap runs into Spider-Man on the rooftop on Christmas.
Right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, we did get a brief cameo by Cap in previous Marvel team-ups, so...
So the other thing I want to point out is that the Amazing that we read was obviously a digital edition, recolored and everything. This issue is scanned directly from the original pages. It's still got the 4 colors, the dots and all that stuff. So, Adam, do you have a preference? Do you like reading comics that have clearly been recolored, or do you like looking at the original color scheme?
I don't really have a preference either way.
Okay. Now, what did you think of this artist, Kerry Gamble? Are you familiar with his art?
Somewhat. I haven't had a lot of experience dealing with their art. I thought it was serviceable. Nothing too creative. I mean, there was a lot of grid panels throughout the entire book, so there wasn't a lot of creative use of layout design. But, I thought the character proportions were okay. The action flowed. Like I said, it was serviceable.
Right. Yeah, I think I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
He's never been one of my favorites, but he's definitely professional and serviceable. You agree, right, Josh?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think that there's definitely some times, too, where the background is a little bit more detailed and there's more thought put into it, which is nice. I definitely don't mind that. And it seems to be when things kind of go into chaos that I feel like the background kind of gets a little bit more detailed, which is kind of adds to like the commotion and like the like danger that's going on. And then when things start to get slow, like with Cap and the woman that he's talking to, we do have a little bit of more detail when they're in the apartment and we kind of establish where they are. And then when things start getting close and it's more close-ups, we have those blank backgrounds, which I love. I really love seeing the blank backgrounds when it's like important moments, like those slow moments, because you can you're really focusing on the one thing in the panel. And I think that when an artist can do that properly and really make a reader kind of just look at the important things and nothing else matters, I love that. So I really wanted to point that out, that I like that small moment.
Well, yeah, it's also nice that in the middle of a scene there'll be 2 panels in a row with backgrounds, and like when when Captain America is fighting the Vermin's what are these, giant rats?
Right.
Yeah. Or what are these? Are these giant rats? I don't even know what they are.
I'm not sure.
I thought they were panthers. I don't know.
Yeah, they're not rats, but it's like background, and then there's no background. But you don't question it, It's like you said, and it's also cool. I mean, this is a classic comic book technique, but there's actually no panel border around the panel with no background, but it emphasizes the characters because you don't even need a background on that panel, I don't think.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of cool. That's another example of it right there. And then the moments between Captain America and who's the second girl? I don't remember her name.
Yeah, I can't.
But when
remember.
they're about to kiss. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no backgrounds there because, again, it would just be distracting, I think.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool. So overall, I mean, usually we give a recommendation, Adam. So would you recommend this comic to people? Would you think you'd read it again?
No, like I said, I don't think it was that bad, but there's so many good comics out there. There's so many better stories with Spider-Man, Captain America, or Vermin. Choose any of those.
Right.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Would you recommend the Amazing issue?
Overall, I would.
Yeah, me too. All right, so now we're going to jump to Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man, number 77. And Adam, you said you want to summarize this one, right?
Okay, well,
sweet.
Hopefully I'll perform a good service here.
Okay, go ahead.
So we start out opening up the issue. It looks like Spider-Man's about to get his neck cut open by these giant blades, but it turns out it's a museum. It's some sort of display museum that's run by Melvin, who was a villain named Gladiator. And it's interesting because this comic has Gladiator, but there's another Gladiator, right?
Are you asking?
Yeah, well, there is a famous Gladiator in Marvel Comics, isn't there?
Well, this Gladiator is the one that was in the Daredevil TV show.
Mm-hmm.
So so this is the one. I was a little confused about that. Okay.
Yeah, although he doesn't look anything like I thought, but I would have to research it, which I didn't do.
Okay, well, this is the Guardian, then this is also, or not the Guardian, this is the Gladiator, also known as Melvin Potter. He's set aside his criminal career, and suddenly he hears gunshots outside of his shop. There's three thugs running away from police, running away, jumping over a fence, escaping, and making their way into Melvin's store, which is a costume store. Now, breaking in, the police, of course, pursue. They don't quite catch the thieves, but there's Melvin right behind them, trying to figure out what's going on. He's going to phone the police, but then they shoot him, or at least shoot past him, threatening him. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, I remember. They did shoot him. They shot him right in the arm. Which he just brushes off, apparently. He takes it like it's a scratch. Then we cut to Spider-Man being by the bedside of Black Cat. So pretty familiar from Amazing Spider-Man. The layout of Black Cat's hospital equipment, completely different from Amazing, though. So we'll touch on that a little bit later. Then we have some radical dream sequences as Peter is snoozing next to Black Cat, thinking about his battle with Doc Ock. There's the psychedelic pink dream that he's having. It almost looks like Doc Ock is like Krang from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in one sequence. And as Spider-Man is sleeping, going, I'll fight you, I'll fight you. In comes Doc Ock through the hospital window to engage in battle with Spider-Man. So, of course, the usual Spidey Doc Ock fight happens, as we've seen time and time again. But then Doc Ock goes for the kill. A threatening blow right to the face knocks Peter down, and he doesn't kill him. Instead, he stops the life support system that is giving Black Cat her very sustenance, her life. I guess she was on life support. I didn't know that was a thing in the previous issue that wasn't explained. But this is the case, and so he says, we will meet again. We'll meet you in, I think it's the next day or the next night. And he walks away. So there's that.
Yeah.
So that was completely pointless. We get another cameo by DeWolf. So again, much like Amazing Spider-Man, swings out. You know, I would question this, but I'll get into that a little bit later. Anyway, as he's swinging out, of course, he sees the police who have congregated around Melvin's costume store because they've tracked down the thieves into there. And the thieves, I guess, have coerced Melvin to put back on the Gladiator armor, and he is going to fight their way through the cops to freedom, or so they're hoping. Well, anyway, the usual thing happens. Spider-Man comes through, he oversees the conflict, he tossles up all the bad guys, webs them up, and then Gladiator, I guess, has some really great hallucination. He must have been smoking some stuff in another panel, because then he sees Spider with a trident and this net like he's a gladiator himself and engages Spidey in battle. Of course, after a brief skirmish that lasts, I think, about 3 pages, Spidey stops Gladiator in a fit of anger from his desire to kill these thieves who manipulated him. And in the end, Gladiator puts down his helmet and says he's giving up this costume life, that he just wants these thieves to be arrested by the police. In the end, I don't think there's anything else to say. That basically sums up the entire issue.
Yeah. Bill Mantlo has done some really good stuff in Spectacular, but this, unfortunately, is another in a streak of sort of just filler, I think. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I don't mind filler. I really don't. If you're going to tell a story in one issue that doesn't affect the overall arc of a multi-issue story, I'm fine with that. But it has to be focused on those characters and what's happening in this issue. And I felt like this was trying to do a little bit of both. I really actually kind of like the stuff with Gladiator. I wanted to see a little bit more of that. I wanted to see maybe a little bit more interaction between Spider-Man and Gladiator, maybe kind of talking it out, but like trying to calm Gladiator down, but we really don't really see any of that. I think we focus way too much time on the Doc Ock stuff. Even though the dream sequence was really nicely done with like Spider-Man having a dream while Doc Ock is actually creeping up to the hospital. We're kind of like cutting back and forth between real life and the dream. I thought that was really well done, but I think story-wise, it just doesn't add anything to the story to what's going on with Gladiator and the rest of things. Spider-Man just happens to swing by while all of this is going on. So there's really Spider-Man doesn't really do much to change anything. Like they were getting arrested and Gladiator wasn't attacking the police, and then Spider-Man showed up, right? I don't think. Like Gladiator was going to stop because he was talking beforehand that he's not going to do this. He already gave up that supervillain life to the thugs. So when he walked out, I assumed that Gladiator was already going to hand them over to the police. And then
that was the insinuation,
right? And then Spider-Man shows up, and that's what makes him kind of revert back into like the Gladiator like evil persona, and then he snaps out of it afterwards. So I don't know. There's a lot of great elements I feel in this, but in the end, I don't think that they fleshed well together.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. And it sort of makes me wonder, why were the Ed Hannigan issues so good? I mean, he wasn't credited as a co-plotter, but either he was co-plotting, or he was suggesting, or his art was just so good that he made any story work. But I just feel like one of the biggest problems is the art, again, by Al Milgrom, just feels like a big mess. Like, I mean, it is helped a little bit by Jim Mooney's inks, but I'm not a fan of this art. Adam, what do you think of this art?
Oh, no, I thought it was a disservice to the issue. No, absolutely. Even that, I think it's Real Page 3.
Okay.
I'm losing track here. No, Real Page 4. Thugs are running away from the police.
Yeah,
their bodies are just so out of proportion.
I know.
There's no sense of distance. I can't really make out where these characters are standing. And I do understand what you're saying about the inking. I think it helps create atmosphere, like the scene where they're hiding from the police within the costume store. You get a sense of depth when you have Melvin walking up those lines from the blinds.
Right.
Just going across his face, that's good. But I also feel like the inking was a little bit too heavy in some sequences, where it contrasted with, let's say, the fight scene with Doc Ock, where there's just nothing but bare backgrounds, where it just was so unfinished looking.
Right, that's a good point, yeah. I mean, I guess I'm only saying that because I know Jim Mooney, I know he's good, so I'm assuming he helped it, but maybe he made it worse. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking through this issue, and there's really no panel that stands out. And I mean, you could say that maybe the storytelling is good, but I mean, when the figures, it's funny because I grew up with Al Milgrom and I always just thought he was just okay. But the more I look at his art, he just really had no clue what he was doing. No offense to the guy. I'm sure actually, I think I've met him. He's a nice guy. But at this point in his career, he just had no grasp of anatomy, perspective, design. Like on his best day, he's a poor man's Frank Miller. But in this issue, I think it was pretty bad. Josh, what did you think?
Yeah, there's times I think where the art is fine, and then others where everything just looks just like slightly off. Like it's, right. I think that like what we were talking about earlier with the goons running away from the police, that's really where it stands out and stuff like that. Where it's just like, those are people running away, but like how? Well, why are they? Why do they look like this? I think some of the stuff looks pretty good and interesting, but for the most part, I don't think it works. Again, I'll jump back to and maybe it's just the coloring and the inking that does it for me with the dream sequence. But I really like again how everything was laid out with the parallels between what's happening in the real and the dream. I like some of the close-ups of Spider-Man, and we have like the dots in the background. Like there are some things that work, and then other things just really don't.
Right. And again, when I was a kid, I could forgive this stuff, but it makes it a struggle. And so, because I know Bill Mantlow's other issues are good, I mean, if I were to reread this series, I'd probably reread this issue, but I don't know if I could. I definitely couldn't recommend it on its own. Adam, what do you think?
I just am torn because it feels like this was 2 issues crammed into one. Was this going to be the battle with Doc Ock, or was this going to be the Gladiator story? And I'm with you. I think the Gladiator story is actually pretty good. It's compelling. I think we see a lot of stories where Peter wonders what he can do to actually rehabilitate a lot of these villains he fights, and here's one who's actually wanting to rehabilitate. I think there's great storytelling potential there. But with the Dr. Octopus fight, not only is it the same thing we saw before, but it ends on a false note and something really out of character for Dr. Octopus. If he's out cold on the floor, why wouldn't he just kill him?
Yeah.
Because I want to make you suffer. No, never has Dr. Octopus been that stupid, except I guess he has been because here he's doing this in this issue.
Yeah.
Right, and if that were the case, why didn't he just kill Black Cat then? Like, yeah, he took the life support away, but like he unplugged her from the wall and then walked away. You know what I mean?
It's like, dude, you have metal arms. You can just put it through her face. What are you doing?
I don't understand why writers think... I mean, all you have to do when you're writing a scene that bad is just go delete and then rewrite it. Just make the villain try to kill the hero or try to kill Black Cat and have Spider-Man stop him. It's just as simple as that. Because it's like you said, even... I don't want to mention a certain TV show, but even the very, very, very best of TV shows have crossed that line where a bad guy has the opportunity to kill the hero. And they're like, at the last moment, no, I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to do this other thing.
Right.
It's just, or
like, give a reason why they can't. Like, we saw him in the last issue. He's on the ground writhing in pain. His arms are severed.
Yeah.
Like, maybe he doesn't have all of his arms back. Or maybe he needed to go to the hospital to get, like, supplies to heal himself. And while he was there, he decided to try to rip off the, Black Cat's, like... medical, like her IV or whatever it is, and then run away. So that they give him an excuse to run away and not stay and just kill them both, right? Like it's that easy to just come up with something. We saw him in the last issue in pain, like rolling on the ground, screaming. He's fine in this issue, right? Like Spidey even says, "Whoa, you got all your arms back? That was quick." Like, come on. Just there's so many other ways you can do that without having like this weird, like, out of character moment.
Exactly.
Agreed.
Yeah. So like I said, I don't recommend this. Did I ask you it, Adam? Do you recommend this one? No, you said no.
Yeah, I didn't actually answer.
Okay.
You know what? I'm gonna say a soft no, only soft because I actually did like the Gladiator element.
Okay.
I wish it would have been developed more. It would have been a nice one and done, but
sure.
But it's a soft no. I will say though, when I hear Gladiator in Marvel Comics, I was actually thinking about the interstellar alien Gladiator.
Yes, I googled that. I forgot about that Guardian with the mohawk. I forgot about him. Josh, you know him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely forgot about him. Sometimes those generic names, like Guardian and Sentinel, like they get used so often that I forget that there's other, versions of the same name.
Yeah.
But anyway, before we wrap up, Adam, I just want to ask, for anyone that doesn't get Spidey, how could you explain... I mean, you talked a little about this at the beginning, but I mean, this was the first comic I was obsessed with. Like, when I got into Spider-Man in the late 80s, this was the first character where I was like, I have to own every single comic Spider-Man's ever appeared in. Like, can you explain Spider-Man's appeal?
I think it's a couple things. First off, the costume is great.
Yes.
And the costume is just allowing the person to be anonymous. Like, it could be anyone under the mask. I know it's been said before, but I think that's an appeal of it. For the Peter Parker thing, when he's not being insufferable, Peter Parker is very relatable. Mm-hmm. It's just, unfortunately, a lot of writers, and I mean a lot, have made him insufferable and have really gave him contradictory characteristics. I think right now, and I should say over the past few years, they've been doing some service to Peter in contemporary issues of Amazing, and there are some great runs. And I think it's when Peter is an empathetic and relatable character, that's what really makes it solid. It's a great appearance and a character that you can relate to. He's fallible, he's human, he makes mistakes.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Do you have a favorite writer or a favorite story that you can recommend?
Oh, that's a very tough one. I think a great introduction though is The Gauntlet.
I don't think I've read The Gauntlet.
It was a pretty contemporary run. It was after One More Day. So a lot of people, they were putting down the books and they were saying, no, we don't want to read this. What it did was it basically reestablished Peter fighting classic villains, but updating it for modern times. And it did it in a way where it wasn't just for the sake of being gritty. It actually made compelling and very suspenseful stories with Spider-Man fighting traditional villains, but also really exploring the themes of each character, especially themes like the dehumanizing of someone like the Lizard. It was great, and all that sort of preteen romance crap that people had tried to put Spider-Man through for years, it was set aside and focused more on the conflict he was having fighting these villains that he oddly saw similarity in himself to. So I think that's a great introduction.
Interesting, and I'm looking it up because I've never read it, but it's written by... Oh, sorry, Josh, you've read it then?
I have read a couple of issues, and specifically the Lizard storylines. I remember, I guess spoiler alert for that, I don't know if you're going to read it, Mike, but I remember there was a lot of struggle with the Lizard and Kurt Connors, and Spider-Man really having to deal with fighting the Lizard and having Kurt Connors as one of his close friends. And I think that at one point he ends up defeating the Lizard and he might die, or maybe there's a death scare or something. And for a while he's really dealing with that. The fact that he couldn't save his friend, but he also couldn't let the Lizard keep wrecking havoc and going about. But I do kind of remember that, remember the Gauntlet storylines.
Well, yeah, I just looked it up quickly, and the writers include Mark Waid, Fred Van Lent, Joe Kelly, Dan Slott, Mark Guggenheim, Zeb Wells, and our pal Roger Stern from Amazing Spider-Man. So maybe I will check it out. That's kind of cool. All right, so yeah, Josh, you can take it from here.
Yeah, we want to know what you guys think about the issues that we're reading and the podcast itself. So we want to we ask that you guys leave us a review or leave us a comment on our Facebook page at the Comic Book Syndicate. You can find us pretty much wherever you can find podcasts. That's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and you can also find us over on Twitter at HCT Spidercast.
That's right.
Yeah. And we want to keep that conversation going, so contact us there.
That's right, and we definitely want to thank Adam Peltier for joining us this week. We'll absolutely have you back if you're interested, Adam.
I will be, for sure. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, for sure. So every week we review usually 3 to 4 issues of Spider-Man in chronological order, if we can, from the 1980s. So please join us again next week. Until next Monday, this has been Here Comes the Spider-Cast.
All right, see you then.